I'm Warren Sharp, and this is Sharp Football Analysis. Hopefully by now this has become your new favorite NFL betting podcast. We're now 12-4 after winning another best bet last week, 34-13 in the 2 years that I've been doing this. We got a best bet on this episode as well. Actually, this is an episode, maybe we'll just call it just the bets, because we slimmed it down with the holidays. We don't have as many guests. We're going to bring in Hribar, go over some of his props momentarily. I'm going to drop my best bet as well, share some other nuggets and insights with you guys. So tune in for that. As a reminder, make sure that you drop who you think is going to score the first touchdown in the Monday Night Football game in the comments below. This week, it's the Rams and Falcons. Hit who you think is going to score that first touchdown to take a shot at winning $100 deposited into your Novig account. If you don't have a Novig account, go ahead and sign up for one of those using the link in the description below. That'll get you a purchase match up to $100 on your first deposit there. And then in addition, you got a shot at winning $100 extra if you're right on who scores the first touchdown in the Rams versus the Falcons game. With that being said, let's dive right into some of the analysis here for Week 17. All right, guys, we are back, and we're going to be talking a little bit about Week 17. I got a couple of interesting nuggets to take away from the Christmas games on last night. But one thing before we dive into that, some of you guys might have seen me tweeting about this disaster that I had with regards to a foosball table. And I just want to share the little backstory on this because it's definitely a Christmas I won't forget in terms of just being a total idiot. But here's what ends up happening. We buy a massive foosball table for the kids. Now, this thing is so heavy that it will cost an extra $200 to have Costco ship it to your house if you order it off the website. So we decided, my wife and I, because we're going there anyways, let's just buy it in person. So we bought it physically at the Costco. I had somebody help load it into the back of our truck with me so that my wife didn't have to do that. And we drive it home. The thing is obviously so heavy. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get it out of the truck just by myself. What I decided to do is, why don't I just open up the box and carry it piece by piece into the house and just stash it in the utility room so that then I can build it, assemble it on Christmas Eve. So went ahead and did that, carried it piece by piece into the utility room. Christmas Eve rolls around, get the kids organized, lock the door to the theater, and this turns into my craft room. I'm going to build this in the theater room. So I'm grabbing all the pieces one by one, this leg carried out, that leg carried out, the table, the glass top, all the different things, put all the things with all the screw packets and all whatnot in the room, and I'm starting to build it piece by piece. At 0 point in time between like the Christmas movies on in the background and the eggnog that I'm consuming, do I even bother to think of one very key aspect of the process here? But I'm building it, I'm assembling it. Finally, I'm done with this thing. Take a picture of it, show it to my wife, say, hey, can you come down now and let's carry it out of the theater room and set it up for display, which is actually right over my shoulder. You could see it back there. Let's set it up for display for the kids so they can come down on Christmas morning and see it down here. She asked the very obvious question. Do you think that's going to fit out of the door? And as soon as she's saying this, my heart drops because I realize instantly I did not contemplate this whatsoever. I'm so focused on building this thing as quickly as possible. It's taking hours to do. It says it's a two-man job. It should take 45 minutes. Well, it's just a single-man job for me. And it definitely takes way more than 45 minutes. The directions are hieroglyphics. It's impossible to figure it out. Long story short, I'm sitting here after about 5 minutes of contemplating, do I do a Chevy Chase in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and fix the newel post by using a chainsaw and just widening my doorway so I can slide this thing through? I realized what I'll do is I'll just flip it on its long end so that it's standing on its short end rather. So it's standing tall in the air with the poles sticking out the side, because the poles took forever to install each one of those across there with the brackets on both sides and whatnot. Easier than just taking, or harder to fix that than just take off the legs again. So I flip it up onto its short side with the long side up in the air, take off two of the legs, and I'm able to swing and pivot it around the door just enough, put a towel underneath, drag it out. Anyways, long story short, it adds an extra hour to like an already exhausted, stressed out Christmas Eve, but I finally get the thing out of there. No harm, no foul, but epic disaster. Never even contemplated the fact that I would have to take it out of that room once I assembled it in there. I'm glad that that is in the rearview mirror. The games have been fun on the foosball table. I've been absolutely dominating the kids. I don't think I've lost a game. We've switched, parents versus kids, me versus this, me and the son versus the two girls, me and my daughter versus the other two. Either way, my team is undefeated. I haven't lost a single game yet. So a lot of fun playing the foosball. A couple quick thoughts on some of the games real quick that we saw. First and foremost, this whole Dan Campbell calling plays for the Detroit Lions and, the Detroit Lions trying to survive without Ben Johnson, it has been an epic disaster. And I know some people say, oh, well, the offensive line is beat up. So do you not see like what the play calling is though? The play calling itself. So Dan Campbell 2 weeks ago against the Aaron Rodgers-led Pittsburgh Steelers. Now I know that their record is okay, but this is not like an elite football team. In a game that you almost need to win, your back is up against the wall, you're a heavy favorite in this game. He calls 7 running back runs for Jahmyr Gibbs and 4 running back runs for David Montgomery. They hardly run the ball at all. Jared Goff's like throwing it over 50 times. Their strategy is to massively lean into the pass. Well, then he gets called out because they didn't run the ball enough. They weren't balanced whatsoever. And so against Max Brosmer and the Minnesota Vikings on Christmas, where you must win or you're out of the playoffs. Like, you have to win this game. They have 27 running back runs, and they average just 2.4 yards per carry. These runs are doing absolutely nothing, yet they continue to run and run and run and run until they lose. Until they lose the game. The longest run out of 24 runs, most of the time when you have a running back who has a high carries line from a props perspective, his longest run is going to be higher because there's more opportunities to break a long one. If you've got a running back who's only going to have 4 or 5 carries, unless he's like one of those super explosive running backs, your longest rush is going to be a little bit lower because you don't have that many opportunities to break one. The longest rush between David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs was 8 yards the entire on 24 rushing attempts. They didn't have a single run that was longer than 8 yards. And yet, despite Jared Goff with Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown and all the receiving core that they have, which are great players, they can't muster an offensive strategy to have success. And this is what happens oftentimes with teams when they promote from within, especially an offensive play caller. They promote from within. It doesn't work out. They're just massively missing Ben Johnson, and they have to address this in the offseason, and they will. They'll go out and find a new offensive coordinator. But certainly, in my opinion, coaching matters massively. We've seen it from a positive side of things in places like Jacksonville or Chicago, with Liam Cohen coming in there and working with Trevor Lawrence, or Ben Johnson going into Chicago and working with Caleb Williams, elevating the players. But in this case, in Detroit, in the case of Philadelphia, we've seen play callers come in being promoted from within, and the offense does not look anything like they were in prior iterations, and that's part of the reason that they're losing. Another game that I found humorous was the game last night where you had the Denver Broncos taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, and this is a second week in a row without Patrick Mahomes, where this offense for the Kansas City Chiefs, I honestly, I'm not going to say I don't know what they're doing from like they're trying to win games. No, I don't know that they're trying to win games. But what is your process or your thought process for Andy Reid? I understand that he's never called games that just don't matter whatsoever. But what is the point of giving Isaiah Pacheco a ton of runs? Thank goodness he didn't go over his rushing total because we bet his under and won that. But giving Kareem Hunt a bunch of carries, giving Isaiah Pacheco a bunch. Don't you have any young guys that you want to work out, see what they can do, get them a little bit of experience? Then you have a quarterback in Chris, I'm not going to pronounce the last name. You don't even attempt a single pass 10 yards down the field. I mean, everything is underneath. Wouldn't you want to try to see what this guy can do a little bit? Try to like test him out a little bit. So the run game is there, the pass game. I mean, look, listen to these targets. 6 targets. The leading receiver for the Chiefs is Travis Kelce. What, I guess, are we trying to hit a milestone here for an incentive? I think that's the case, but what is Travis Kelce doing for us? Why wouldn't we try to get some of these younger guys? And beyond that, Juju Smith-Schuster is the second leading receiver with 16 yards and 3 targets. And then Marquise Brown is the third leading receiver with 7 yards. Why are we working in Marquise Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster here? There is nobody that's younger on this team as a receiving option that we want to try to work into this offense and get a little bit of work. I don't understand what Andy Reid's thought process is here with roster evaluation as we close out the end of the 2025 season, but it doesn't really matter that much. It's just interesting how some coaches approach things. I would approach it a little bit different, but I'm standing here talking to you on a podcast. Andy Reid is coaching a team, has won multiple Super Bowls. So there you go. Okay. I believe it is time now for Rich Hribar. We're going to be talking a lot about some of his favorite prop looks. But before we get into that, I do want to mention it is the holiday season and we're doing something special this week to say thank you for all of the support that you've given us in this podcast over the last year. As my present to all of our listeners, you can get all of our prop bets for this week for just $19.99. That's an 80% discount, $19.99. I've been giving you my favorite prop of the week on this show since the start of the season. Obviously, I shared the results. We've hit 12 and 4, 12 out of 16, 75% win rate, but there's only one of those per show. If you want a lot more props to bet this holiday weekend, we've got a couple games on Saturday, we got games on Sunday, we got a game on Monday. There you go. And as my free extra gift to you on top of that, $19.99, how about all our sides and totals and teasers or anything else that we do for this week thrown in for free as a complete bonus? So there you go. We've had a great year for our clients. A $100 bettor has won $8,673 following my bets this season. So don't miss your chance. Go to sharp.football and click the link at the top of the page to get on board for all our props for $19.99 for week 17, plus all sides totals thrown in for free. Let's go ahead and welcome in Rich Hribar, and let's talk about some of Rich's favorite looks this week. Rich is our fantasy football guru. He's a loyal member of our Sharp Prop Squad, and he's got some great looks today for some of his favorite props. So Rich, welcome into the show. We're going to go ahead and get through some props momentarily, but first of all, how was Christmas for you and the family?
Yeah, Christmas was excellent. I hope everyone else there had a really good Christmas as well. It was a lot of building things, as dad life knows. You know how that goes. A lot of batteries were found, a lot of putting stuff together. And I think my house might have all the cardboard in the world stacked in my garage. So I think there's probably a lot of people feeling that too. But I'm going to be getting rid of cardboard, it feels like, for about 3 months.
Yeah, recycling day is going to not be fun for the guys taking out the recyclables, but definitely, once a year, you got to treat the kids right, because guess what? Life goes by too quickly. And then, you're going to miss days and years when you are able to like spoil the kids or have fun or assemble things for hours. It's definitely can be a little challenging at times, but you're going to look back on it one day and miss these times. And I know that myself. So with that being said, I'm glad it was a good one for you and the family. Let's jump into a few of your favorite looks this week on the card. And we're going to start first with Tyler Shough passing yards over 218.5, which is our current line. Talk to us a little bit about what you see here in Tyler Shough's matchup that gives you a reason to want to bet his over, in addition to like the fact that what is the run game for the New Orleans Saints at this very moment?
Yeah, that's kind of where that shapes out from when you look at this in particular matchup. But over the past 6 games, I mean, he's averaging 248 passing yards per game. He's gone over 239 passing yards in 5 of his past 6. The only exception was that rain-soaked game in Tampa Bay where they kind of played like the second half in like that monsoon. Since week 10, Tyler Shough is actually second in the NFL in completion percentage. I don't know if anyone has been catching on to that, but we saw him last week, set season highs in completions, pass attempts, and passing yards. And that's because, as you hinted on, like the state of this running game, just being down so many running backs with a Devin Neal injury out for the year. They really kind of leaned into kind of Taysom Hill being the lead running back last week. But they threw the ball 13% over expectations last week, 16% over expectations on first downs. That's really important heading into this matchup because the Tennessee Titans, believe it or not, are the number one pass funnel in the NFL. Teams have thrown the ball 6.3% over expectations against them. It's the highest rate in the NFL because the Tennessee Titans since week 9 have allowed the fewest rushing yards per game to running backs over that span. You wouldn't think because they're such a bad team that that's the case, but they're actually forcing teams to throw. They only have 2 players in their secondary that started the season on their roster right now. And they're allowing a 241.1 passing yards per game. That's 23rd in the NFL. Before the Chiefs game last week, that reprieve, and I heard you just talking about Chris Oladokun, Gardner Minshew started that game too as well. They had allowed over 220 passing yards to 8 straight quarterbacks. So everything just kind of lines up here for Tyler Shough to keep being effective and efficient throwing the football against a team that's inviting teams to throw the football on them.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I think this is a great look by you, and certainly one that we're going to add to the portfolio. This is one of the last times of the year that we're going to be able to bet on Tyler Shough, because obviously he's not making the playoffs. Your next player is a guy who is going to be in the playoffs. So right now they're seated as potentially getting a first-round bye, and that is the Chicago Bears. And we're looking at DeAndre Swift. Do you think he's in a great position here to have success on the ground? Talk to us a little bit about why you like DeAndre Swift's rushing yards over.
Yeah, and he's hit this number in 8 of 10 games since the bye. He's averaging just under 81 rushing yards per game over that spot. But this is an excellent matchup for the rushing game. And I know a lot of people on Monday night just watched 49ers slow down Jonathan Taylor and that shotgun-based rushing game now that the Colts have. But the Bears lead the NFL in success rate in rushing plays at 47.7% now. The 49ers are 29th in success rate defending rushing plays. But it's really the types of runs that the Bears run that the 49ers have trouble with. So DeAndre Swift is 3rd in the NFL in rate of outside zone runs, 52% of his carries. Now, Kyle Monangai is at 5th, to keep this in mind too, if you like Kyle Monangai as well. But the 49ers allowed 5.6 yards per carry to running backs on outside zone runs. That's 29th. They have the lowest success rate defending those runs in the NFL at 49.3%. They've allowed a first down or touchdown on 29% of those runs. That's first. Dead last in the NFL, the highest rate that is, So all of those things kind of line up for the Bears to have a really effective run game. I like DeAndre Swift the most, but like I said, if you do like Kyle Monangai as well, he's in play here as an extension of this process as well, because he's getting the same types of runs. They're kind of interchangeable, but I'm leading off of DeAndre Swift here as my favorite of the two.
All right, there you go. Good spot for DeAndre Swift, and another guy that we're not going to be able to bet later on this year because the Cincinnati Bengals flamed out in 2025 thanks to the loss of Joe Burrow for a while. But they've got Joe Burrow back, and you're looking at Chase Brown, and you're looking at his combo rush and receiving yards this week in a good situation. The line currently is 81.5 rushing and receiving yards. What makes you enjoying the over in Chase Brown, 81.5 rushing and receiving?
Yeah, and Chase Brown's really bounced back the second half of the season, even before Joe Burrow came back. I mean, he's gone over 100 total yards in 6 of his past 7 games. He is sharing a little more rushing work, which is why I didn't, just strictly look at like his rushing line here. We've seen Samaje Perine almost get close to like a 50-50 rushing role, but we're still seeing Chase Brown dominate the snaps and the touches overall. And then the Cardinals, like they were already a defense that have struggled the back half of the year with injuries, and then they just absolutely had another terrible Sunday last week. They lost Garrett Williams and Walter Nolan for the season. Josh Sweat, him exited that game. He's not expected to play this week, although we record this on Friday mornings. We're waiting for one more injury report. Budda Baker's in concussion protocol. Like this team is just finishing the season right now at this point. And they have allowed 5.2 yards per carry to running backs over their past 6 games at 31st in the NFL. They've allowed a league high 186 yards from scrimmage to running backs over the past 6 weeks, with 100 yards or more to a running back in 5 of those 6 games. So looking at Chase Brown to finish the season strong in terms of getting opportunities, and like the combo yardage here the most of his angles.
All right, well, there we go. 3 outstanding props from Rich on this slate. And as a reminder, you guys can make sure that you go over to sharpfootballanalysis.com, check out all of Rich's outstanding work. He's got one more week in him, one more week that we need to hit before. Give him a little bit of a reprieve there, week 18, but he's got game previews up right now for all 16 games. He's going to be coming back with DFS analysis, helping you guys for your fantasy football championship if you've got one this week, with some of his rankings and projections. So if you need any assistance, Rich is your man. Go over to sharpfootballanalysis.com and check him out. Obviously, we'll have Rich back for the week 18. We'll do props just like we normally do, but we don't need to dive into the fantasy streets quite as deep. And then we'll come back for the postseason like normal with the game previews and everything ramping back up. So, Rich, outstanding season as usual. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year in advance before we catch you on next week's show. And good luck this week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Good luck, everyone.
And that'll do it for Rich Hribar. Outstanding stuff as usual, guys, from Rich. You would expect nothing less. Now we're going to bring in our referee expert, Joe Gibbs. Joe is going to be breaking down several games for us, including some big primetime games. We've got the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Buffalo Bills with Ron Torbert on the call. As a reminder, you can find all of Joe's outstanding referee analysis over at sharpfootballanalysis.com, where he gives you weekly insight in an article that he creates, as well as some historical data on all the different refs and their crews, in case you're interested. Joe, welcome into the show. First up, Merry Christmas. Hope that you had a great one there. And any crazy stories or shenanigans occur for your family's Christmas this year?
No, it was pretty much just all football, and that was pretty uneventful, for the most part. So a dull Christmas.
Very, very dull. If you're talking about the NFL slate, a lot of people are like, "Well, it's too bad some of these teams were bad and whatnot, and this happened." But the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Washington Commanders. If you didn't know ahead of the season that the Commanders should be taking a little bit of a step back this year, and the Dallas Cowboys only had a 7.5 game win projection at the start of the season, and that's on the NFL for putting that game on Christmas, because that game was always at risk of being a problem. Now, the other two, maybe not quite as much, but you're going for the Minnesota Vikings. You should know that the Minnesota Vikings might be taking a step back. The win projection certainly suggested that as well. And then you're looking at the Detroit Lions. Yeah, that's a team that was definitely surprisingly bad. And then, of course, Kansas City Chiefs and Denver Broncos. That was the biggest surprise game. But, it's the NFL's fault, in my opinion, Joe, for sticking the Minnesota Vikings and the Dallas Cowboys and the Commanders on the Christmas slate. They knew that in the summer that these teams would probably not be as good as they were last year. And, they get what they deserve in that regard. We'll see if they change things up next year.
They spread themselves so thin, though, with so many standalone games that, look, you're not going to hit on all of them. And yesterday was really a Murphy's Law for the NFL. Not that I'm feeling too bad for them, but, yeah, you have so many standalone primetime games. You've got 2 on Saturday now, and that Ravens-Packers game doesn't have a whole lot of juice to it, as we anticipated before the season started. So, yeah, this is what happens.
Yeah, sometimes you're going to have some duds, but it's terrible to line up 3 duds on Christmas, because you got so many willing eyeballs who would sit there. And I'll tell you, I didn't really tune in very aggressively on Christmas, and I do this for a living. But it's like I'm weighing the cost benefit of spending time sitting on my couch watching the game locked in versus hanging out with the family once a year, and those games just were not compelling enough. So tough look for the NFL there. Let's talk about hopefully what is a better look. And this first game I teed up, the Eagles at the Bills with Ron Torbert. What does he on the whistle mean to the outcome of this game, Joe?
Well, it's good for the Eagles on the surface of things. The Eagles had 3 games with Torbert last year. They were 3-0 straight up and against the spread, including their Super Bowl over the Chiefs. But going back to 2022, the Eagles are 6-0 straight up, 4-2 against the spread with Ron Torbert. All time with Sirianni and Hurts, 6-1 and 5-2 against the spread. And Torbert approaches the game similarly to Sean Huckley, who we've mentioned a lot, and there's a lot of focus around the line of scrimmage. And Torbert this season leads the NFL with pre-snap penalties. 45.5% of his overall penalties are assessed by a pre-snap. So focus along the offensive line, the defensive line. And, I say this all the time, what's the best thing to combat an officiating crew that approaches the game that way? And it's a good offensive line. And what do the Eagles have, or I should say had, is a good offensive line. Now, they've struggled a little bit this year, but I do think they get Lane Johnson back this week. I'm not 100% certain on that, but if he returns, it's certainly a major boost for the Eagles heading into the playoffs. Torbert himself, first down penalties, I never talk about those all too much. 74% of his first down penalties are on the offensive side of the ball. So that's the league-leading percentage in that category. And so that sets you back more often than not with his crew versus some other crews where you're playing from behind the chain. So on the other side, 8.5% of his penalties are assessed by defensive pass interference, defensive holding. That's the lowest in the league. The league average is about 13.5%. Torbert ranks last defensive pass interference penalties and 10th for defensive holding penalties. In the league, the Eagles are a top 5 penalized team for defensive pass interference, but the Bills are not a proficient offense at generating those. So I do think we see a little bit of a lower scoring game. Torbert games 57% to the under since 2020. As for the teams themselves, and you may know more about this, Warren, than I do, I'm not sure how much the game means for each team. Their playoff fate is kind of decided to some degree, isn't it?
Well, I think some of it depends on what we see here in the games prior to this one. But certainly, I do believe that both teams have something to play for here. But you're right. From terms of locked up into the postseason, yeah, these teams are good to go in that regard.
Yeah, they're in the postseason. I mean, the Eagles have won the NFC East. I don't think they can get any higher than the 2nd seed. I don't think. I could be wrong on this. And the Bills, if the Patriots win on Sunday and they play the Jets, I don't think the Bills can win the AFC East. So that's my biggest concern as far as looking at this game. I like the Eagles, but having said that, I'm not fully aware of what it means for each team and what the strategy will be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. Certainly, if you're the Buffalo Bills, you got to take something off of Josh Allen's plate, especially with him not being quite at 100% with his injury. And, you know, the fact that they should have success running the football. It might be a big James Cook day on the ground if they're able to stay in this one. Okay, next up, we've got the Chicago Bears taking on the San Francisco 49ers. This one is a massively important game for the NFC 1 seed. This one's going to be officiated by Alex Moore. This crew gives me the chills because I know they call a lot of penalties, but who does it benefit most in this game? The way that this crew calls penalties, is it the 49ers or the Bears, Joe?
I think the 49ers, and as soon as I saw him in this game, I thought of you because I know you don't like this guy. And I'm surprised they put him on this game because it is a huge game. And this is a rookie referee who's called a lot of penalties. It messes up the game. They lead the league in penalty per game average. So we'll start right there. Offensive holding, false starts, a point of emphasis. They rank 3rd overall in both categories. What else we got here? Moore's crew, they've ordered the most automatic first downs via penalty this season. So, yeah, it's just a very choppy game when these guys get involved. And you're going to get a lot of penalties. I do trust, if I had a penalty level confidence meter, which I don't, I do have more faith in 49ers in this because Shanahan runs a tight ship. The 49ers rank 31st in penalty per game average. Only the Rams are better this season. The Bears have improved, but there still is that, last week against the Packers, they were very sloppy, a lot of penalties, and there's always that potential with the Bears to mess things up, whereas I trust the 49ers more from that point of view. Bears ranked number 1 for defensive pass interference. Alex Moore's crew ranked number 1 for defensive pass interference. Sorry, roughing the passer, my bad. Bears rank number 1 for roughing the passer. Moore ranks number 1 for roughing the passer. 87% of those on the road team. The Niners co-rank number 1 for unnecessary roughness. Moore's crew placed major emphasis on that. Moore's crew call a disproportionate percentage of their penalties on 1st and 2nd down, and more so on the offensive side of the ball versus the average. So because of that, they drop off a cliff on 3rd down. They do tend to let them play more so than the league average on 3rd down, and they call a disproportionate amount of penalties on the defensive side of the ball on 3rd down. So all this adds up to is home teams 9-6 straight up, 9-6 against the spread with Alex Moore, and Alex Moore is 10-5 to the over in 2025. So they do trend higher, and I kind of like this game over. It's a high total. but both offensive units have an edge over their defensive counterparts in this one. The biggest issue may be just running the ball at an effective rate and chewing a lot of clock, which may not help so for the over. But I do lean the over, and the 49ers, like I said, I do trust them a little bit more with this crew than I do with the Bears.
This total has been bet towards the over. Open 51.5 at most spots on Sunday evening, was available 51.5 Monday morning as well. Been bet up to 52.5. Not a massive move, but a little bit of a move. Games out in California, so weather shouldn't be too big of a factor there. But as you mentioned, a lot of penalties by Alex Moore. So we'll see who this ends up benefiting the most, but excellent insight into that one, Joe, as per usual. And as a reminder, if you guys want to find more of Joe's outstanding insight, head over to sharpfootballanalysis.com, where you can check out all of his detailed analysis each week in his referee article with some game previews and some historical ref analysis for some of this crew. With that being said, Joe, thanks again for joining us. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you again I guess in 2026 here in next week's Week 18 episode to close out the regular season. But just like Rich, Joe will be back with us throughout the course of the postseason, analyzing games on a week-to-week basis where the stakes are extraordinarily high. So the referees that are assigned to these crews matter a ton, and Joe's insight will be very valuable at that point during the season. Joe, thanks again.
Great. Thanks, Warren. Good luck.
As I've mentioned many times on the show this season, we've partnered with Novig, America's #1 sports prediction market, to give you an exclusive opportunity to try out their platform. They're offered in many states sportsbooks are not allowed, including Texas, Florida, Georgia, and more. And right now you can get a purchase match of up to $100 with code WARREN. Just click the Novig link in the description of the show below to get your $100 match when you open up a new account. And don't forget to comment below who you think will score the first touchdown in the Rams-Falcons Monday Night Football game for a chance to win an extra $100. Now we've got my turn. It's my turn for the Novig value of the week. 12-4 on these this season, 34-13 since I started this podcast last season. And we're going to go to a player who I've not bet on this season at all, but we've done him and used him in some of these back last season at the beginning of last year, and that is Kenneth Walker. And right now, his longest rush is 12.5 yards against the Carolina Panthers. And we're going to go over 12.5 yards for Kenneth Walker's longest rush. First and foremost, if you take a look at the run defenses that the Seattle Seahawks have gone up against, you can see that the Carolina Panthers are a massive departure from who they've played the last couple of weeks. And in fact, they're the worst run defense, the easiest to go up against that Kenneth Walker has faced this entire season. So that's one thing going for him. Second thing going for him, he's exceeded this in 5 of his last 7 games. He hit 55 yards on a long run against the Rams, and that was last Thursday. So this is an interesting rest situation because the Seattle Seahawks have several extra days of rest late in the season. That is something that's valuable. And that builds into the spread on this game, which right now the Seattle Seahawks are laying, 7.5 points here? 7 to 8 points, it depends where you're shopping, on the road in Carolina, which is a very heavy line for a team like the Seattle Seahawks with Sam Darnold at quarterback. Now, I would not expect Sam Darnold to go off in this game and have a stellar game, nor would I expect the Seattle Seahawks to lean into Sam Darnold throwing the ball a lot here. If you look at the Seahawks schedule, 3 of their last 4 games have been at home, and they also played a road game in a dome in Atlanta. So now they're going outdoors on the East Coast away from home. A little bit of change in pace. I think they're going to need to lean a little bit more into the ground game of Kenneth Walker. Now, Zach Charbonnet does split touches, and Kenneth Walker does have more rushing attempts than does Zach Charbonnet. But I don't believe that the Seattle Seahawks are going to come in here and win this game like they've won some of their games, which allowed them to kind of rest Kenneth Walker a little bit down the stretch. So, for example, 26-0 over the Minnesota Vikings a month ago. 3 weeks ago, it was a 37-9 victory over the Atlanta Falcons. I do think the Carolina Panthers are going to punch back a little bit in this game. And if you look at the Carolina Panthers and who they've gone up against, I've got my little game log here to show you that last week they allowed Rachaad White a 39-yard run. They also allowed Devin Neal the week before that of the New Orleans Saints. And I mean, who is Devin Neal? He had a 15-yard run. The week before that, they allowed Blake Corum a 34-yard run of the Rams. The week before that, they allowed Christian McCaffrey a 17-yard run. The week before that, they allowed Bijan Robinson of the Falcons a 19-yard run. The week before that, they allowed Devin Neal a 14-yard run. And that was when he was playing second fiddle to Alvin Kamara. And they still allowed Alvin Kamara in basically his last game. He was playing injured in that game, and then the Saints have shut him down every game since. Kamara had 83 yards rushing in that game, and he had a long of 16. The week before that, they allowed Josh Jacobs a long of 18. And the week before that, they allowed James Cook a long of 64 yards. So I've gone through all the way back until week 7 when they played the Jets. That was the last game, and that was back on October 19th. So we're talking over 2 months ago. That was the last time that a running back did not have a run of at least 13 yards against this defense. And so we're seeing a lot of running backs have success, even some running backs that aren't as good as Kenneth Walker. And I don't necessarily think Kenneth Walker, back a little while ago, it was like Kenneth Walker burst onto the scene literally and figuratively. It looked like he could be the next best thing. He's obviously cooled down a lot since then, been a lot more hit or miss, a lot lower yards per carry. This offensive line has had their share of injuries, although even with Charles Cross out, their left tackle stepped in, played really well last week. They didn't drop off. And like I mentioned, Kenneth Walker had 100. What do you have? No, he had 94 rushing yards and only 9 attempts with a long of 55. He had 2 runs of 17 plus yards last week against the Rams, a much better defense than they're going up against here on the road in the Carolina Panthers. The other thing that I kind of like about this one is that I didn't even mention a lot of these other running backs who had longest runs of 12 yards, and we're looking to go over 12 and a half. So 12 is not very different than 13 when you're talking about longest runs. But because some of these running backs were just on the precipice of this number, I'm not mentioning them, but listen to some of these other guys. Last week, Bucky Irving had a long of 12. Kyron Williams the week before that, Kyron Williams had a long of 12. Brian Robinson the week before that had a long of 12. So there's 3 guys within the last 3 games who had long rushes of 12 that I didn't mention in part of this other group. So I think there's a very good opportunity for Kenneth Walker, K9, to have a longest run of at least 13 yards here against this Carolina Panthers. I'll be honest, from a betting perspective, this is not my top prop of the week, like my favorite one that I've had over the course of this season. It's a solid bet in my opinion. I think it hits. We're using it for the best bet of the week, but from a relative betting perspective, I would not be going overboard on this particular one. Like I said, we're 12-4 on the season. This is probably one that I like a little bit less than some of those other 16 that we've given so far this year, but I still think it's going to hit on Sunday afternoon. So that's my Novig value of the week. And that's going to do it for our week 17 episode of the Sharp Football Analysis Show. Make sure that you guys are subscribed over on YouTube or your favorite podcasting app. Good luck to all of your wagers this week. Hope we get some games on Saturday and Sunday that are better than what we saw on Christmas. But either way, it's going to be fun. We'll see you guys soon before the new year. But obviously, an early Happy New Year to those of you guys who are not going to catch us until next week's Friday edition of the show. And we'll talk to you then. Good luck this week.
Go,